Welcome to Dementia-Friendly Prince George's County, Maryland, Northern Sector webinar series for caregivers. Today's topic is Life After Losses by Cheryl Streeter, sponsored by Prince George's County Government and Department of Family Services.
My name is Cheryl Streeter, and I'm here to talk to you about living life after losses. I am a lead volunteer with AARP Maryland, and I retired in 2009. And after ending my job for about 2 years, I was content in retirement. And then I realized that life is not over. There's some other things I want to do. And so I got started with AARP. Let me give you a disclaimer first. This session is not intended to give you medical advice or treatment or to tell you what to do with your life. It's informational, it's educational, and it's to give you ideas, creative ways to think about how you should move forward with your life. And I dare say that you will find some interesting points today. And so just wanted to put that in to get us started. Now let's look at losses as we live. Now, all of us experience losses throughout our lives, but as we age, these losses take on a new look, a new feel. They're different from those that we experienced earlier in our lives when we were younger. Well, first of all, these later life losses involve more finality. At 68 years old, I'm finding that I may have some cognitive changes, some sensory losses that are going on. I have some ringing in my ear now. I wear glasses. So these are changes that occur, but these losses are not final. But even surgery can correct some of them. It can improve some of them. But as we age and get older, it may take more surgeries, and then we may decide, I can just do with the ringing in my ear, as I've decided to do. But then secondly, in our later years, we often face multiple losses at the same time, making it very difficult to deal with them individually. And so we don't have time to recover from one loss before there's another one that sets in. And so we have all of these losses that are very final, that happen in multiple changes. So what's needed? We can become overwhelmed. We can get stuck in grieving. We can get stuck in wondering, how am I going to move forward with so many changes? Or we can simply begin to think about the concept of resiliency. Resiliency is the capacity of people to integrate loss with changes in their lives. Loss and change are intertwined. They're integrated into our lives organically. Resilience is the ability to simply bounce back from negative experiences or from difficult challenges. Resilience. Resilience is the ability to return to the original form after we've been bent, stretched, compressed, after depression, adversity, illness. So how would you ever handle it if you lost everything you had today? What would be your next steps? How long would you be sad or depressed or upset or angry even? What would it take for you to pull yourself up and start all over again? How resilient of you. Could you? Would you? What would it take? So today we're going to learn some effective ways to cope with negative thoughts and emotions and how to build ourselves up with resiliency, finding a new sense of purpose or refueling the purpose that we had earlier in life, developing a strong social network and one that is intergenerational, yes, including younger people. Develop a philosophy for your life. Setbacks are temporary. You can come back from loss. You have to learn to nurture yourself. Many times we nurture other people, but we forget about ourselves. Develop problem-solving skills. We do it at the job. Let's do it in our lives so that we can embrace change. And then establish goals and an action plan, even if we have to write it down to make certain that we follow that plan and achieve those things that we wish to achieve. We're going to talk about these 5 losses in later life, and we're going to take them one by one. Let's start with independence. Loss of independence. Now, for most of us, one of the most difficult and far-reaching losses that we can experience is the loss of our independence. British studies have shown, and the US studies are similar, that a few years ago, 49% of the people feared losing independence, while only 29% feared dying. We don't mind dying, but when we live, we want to be as independent as possible and not have to depend on anyone at all. When you look at that study, it showed number one was loss of independence, followed by declining health. Number three was running out of money. Number four, not being able to live at our own home. And then number five was death of a spouse or other family member. Remember, when we were younger, we couldn't wait to turn 18. We wanted to be an adult so badly and so quickly. We've cherished our independence. But what has happened is that as we age, we see the independence slowly slipping away and changes occurring in our lives. We spend our whole lives trying to be adults, and now that we're adults, we find ourselves perhaps going back to some of those dependent child and teenage-like years. So we can do better. So what causes us to have a loss of independence? Well, we may have a loss of vision, changes in our hearing, our physical changes as we age, mobility. We may move slower, or we may need canes or walkers or wheelchairs to help us to move about. There's a loss of memory or some cognitive changes. It doesn't have to be dementia, but just not thinking of things as quickly as we once did. Loss of personal rights, even guardianship. We may have to turn over our finances to a child or to a trusted loved one. And then there's the loss of a spouse, friends, significant others. As we age, many people that we've grown older with may no longer be with us. And so we need to get new friends, perhaps, but there is that loss that we experience in the meantime. But let's think about what really is being lost. I just showed you those things, and those are primary losses. But the what that is lost is not always what we see at first blush. Sometimes it's the secondary loss that really makes the change for us. And so let's look. Think, for example, that you have the loss of a loved one. Now, that's a primary loss, but what's compounding and making it a secondary loss is that now we may have to move from the house that we were in. We may have to move into assisted living because we're unable to live alone. There's an emotional problem that arises because the person that we depended on, who was there to talk to us every day, is no longer there. And so there's that secondary loss of loneliness. And then on the screen here, you see the loss of beauty. As we age, I think we get more beautiful, actually, but sometimes that loss of the image that we had is replaced with the fact that we now have some wrinkles on our face, or our hands and our body may not be the same as it was before. We may doubt our desirability, or the fact that others may look at us and think of us as old. For example, you may lose your car. And so your driving privileges have now gone because you no longer can see very well to drive at night, perhaps. And so our loss of independence and mobility, being able to just get into the car and go wherever we wanted to go, whenever we wanted to go, and be with all of our friends, that changes. That's a secondary loss. And then the loss of our home. If we no longer want or need or can live in the home that we had, where there are 2 or 3 flights of stairs, we have to change to somewhere else. And there's a loss of security because we felt comfortable in that home. We were familiar with that home. All of our family members would come there to see us. And if we move to an assisted living facility, there's maybe a loss of privacy because now you're sharing the dining area with other people. All of these are things that are losses for us. And we have to think of how do we make it through these losses. If we're no longer in our own home, for example, we have to meet new people. We have to learn how to chit-chat and talk with new people. We have to start thinking of how can I get around now without being dependent on others, without being a burden to my family. Those are the things that are going through our minds. Well, let me tell you what we have to do. We have to be patient. We have to be able to show patience. If you're dealing with someone who's going through these types of losses, show them patience, patience, and more patience. If it's you that's going through it, be patient with yourself. You need time to come to terms with the changes that you're going through, as well as the changes that you're going to go through as you move forward. What you'll have to do is normalize the feelings of loss. Understand that losing independence is a common experience for all people as we age. It's not a sign of personal failure. It's not a sign of imminent death. It's normal. It's normal to have these changes in life. Be open in your communication with yourself and with others. Set aside plenty of time to discuss things with your family, with your children. We have to be able to share how we're feeling about the losses, as well as what we would like for them to do and keep in mind as we age and as we go forward. Let your thoughts and what you want be known to your family members and to your friends. Don't expect them to be able to read your mind. And then talk about how to make your life easier. How can you make things easier? Is it an alternative living arrangement? Is it moving in together with another family member? Posting calendars or planning tools, post-it notes, to-do lists. Attend other senior group meetings and learn what others are doing. Combining households so that you can share financial expenses, you can share caregiving. My sister has moved in with me, and it's been a blessing because now the two of us are here together and we can talk about our childhood. We can talk about experiences that we've had in life, and we can talk about changes going forward. What is it that she wants to happen with her life? And what is it that I want, so that we're there for each other? Discuss safety concerns. If you live where there's stairs, should you move everything down on one level of the house and live there mostly, and perhaps move a younger family member in to move into the upstairs portion of the house so that you have someone there with you? How can you arrange cooking and cleaning, answering the door to strangers? Should you have security cameras installed? How do you plan for emergencies? Shoveling of snow, raking of leaves, cutting of grass, all of those things for safety concerns. And then find comfort in things that you enjoy. Do you like music, movies? Should you get a pet? What treasured belongings do you have that you want to keep, even if you have to downsize and move? These are things that are very important that you have to talk about when you're coping with loss of independence. What about giving up driving? Now, that's a totally different animal in itself. How do you find a new neighbor that you can get to know who does continue to drive? What walking paths are near you? Are there water aerobic classes, Bible study, a book club, gardening? What is there for you so that when you give up your driving, there's still something near you that you can take advantage of? Talk about it. Listen. There are suggestions that can help you. Whether you take action to sell your car, don't do it too quickly, because it may be something that just is terrible for you to have to do quickly. But take your time. And when you're ready to act on it, get someone to help you get started in selling your car or giving it to a family member. Look at alternative means of transportation. Maybe you don't want to ride the subway or the bus, but there are car share services, Uber and Lyft, that's available to you. There's Seabreeze services for seniors that take them to doctor appointments and to shopping and out on social gatherings. The thing to do is just to remember to have new interests, maintain your old interests that may not be linked to driving, but those that are linked to driving, find alternative transportation so that you can continue to do those things. You want to continue to do as much normal things as possible to maintain that independence. Now let's look at social roles, because social roles are very important as well. If we're not careful, we can start to feel isolated. Think about the pandemic when it occurred and everyone had to stay home. That isolationism was a feeling of loss for many of us. We weren't able to go to church and go see family members. We weren't even able to go visit loved ones who were in the hospital. And as people age, they tend to have a change in their social roles, whether you're a parent, employees, spouses, friends, whatever. Just think about it. Maybe at family gatherings, you were the one that all of the people came to for advice. The children pulled up their chairs to listen to you talk and hear stories about what used to happen in the quote olden days. Well, now kids may not want to hear those things. They talk a different language and they think they can Google everything and the answers are on the internet. It may seem as if you're not needed anymore. And so you may become depressed. But no, you are still needed. Don't let that thought of isolationism come into your mind. We may find that we sit on the periphery of a group now instead of in the center of the group, but we're still part of that group. You may go from being the family hero, the patriarch and the matriarch, to simply being dependent on your children. Let's be thankful for the fact that we have our children and that we have other family members who want to be there with us, who are there to make certain that we're not alone and that we know that we are not alone. So that's some changes that we have. Now, statistics have shown that when you're isolated, your blood pressure may become an issue. Common colds and illnesses may become an issue because you may not be taking as good a care of yourself as you should. And so we want to make certain that we do have others in our lives to remind us about our health, to remind us to take our medicine. And then there's the Alzheimer's research studies that have shown that just the thought of some of these losses and social roles have actually contributed to cognitive decline because instead of getting out and being around people and reading books and staying abreast of what's going on, sometimes we simply sit at home. And that's not what we want to do. So we want to make certain that when we have these changes in our social roles, that we know how to cope with those losses. And here are some things that you can do. First of all, develop reciprocal relationships. If there's something that you do very well, if you bake cakes and cookies and bread very well, but you need someone to do lawn work for you, find someone in the neighborhood that you can cook a cake for and they will come and cut your grass. Increase your social interactions. There are senior citizen community centers all around the area. Become involved with one. For Zoom meetings, even. There are book clubs that are on Zoom. There are senior citizens communications and chat groups that are on Zoom and on the internet. Stay connected socially with people. Identify some activities that you're really good at or some good activities that you want to become involved in. Suppose you wanted to always learn how to speak Spanish or French, but you never did. This may be a good time for you to do it. Don't think about the fact that you can't learn it as well as perhaps you could have in your 30s or 40s. The fact is, learn that you can, and then find someone who speaks that language and practice with them. And even if you don't excel at anything, just get involved in something anyway. Join a book club, a walking club, a pet sitting club. Most of us have grandchildren and children who have pets, and when they go to travel, they put the pets in a boarding kennel. Well, perhaps you should become that person to babysit for them. It's not that you excel at anything that matters. It's that you're doing something. You want to remain active, socially active. So your social roles may change, but they can still be fulfilling. The next loss in later life we want to talk about is our identity, our self-esteem. Self-esteem refers to one's overall positive look about themselves, their self-evaluation, whether or not they feel competent, whether or not they feel worthy, whether or not they like themselves. What may cause the loss of self-esteem at our age may be retirement. Perhaps we were in a supervisory or a management position, or we were a key employee that everyone depended on. Well, now that we've retired, we don't have those people depending on us. And so our self-esteem may change. We may think that we're not as needed as before. our loss of our body image, our sexuality. We may think that we're not as beautiful as we once were. Our bodies change, our health changes. There may be some pain that we're experiencing now. And then that reduced sense of accomplishment. As we were younger, we were going after our careers, we were pursuing life and raising our families and watching our children grow and achieve so many different things, where now that sense of accomplishment maybe changes. We aren't who we once were, but who we are now is still important. We've got to cope with that loss of self esteem. And one of the first ways to do it is simply to reinvent yourself. Perhaps you're no longer a mother or father raising children. Perhaps you're not raising your grandchildren, but there are some young people that you can interact with who need your wisdom. Yes, we need to rethink how we can cope with our social esteem changing. And when we do that, we want to make certain that we're focusing on those things that are very important. We may start to feel some physical effects of aging. And so reinvent yourself. Have things that aren't dependent on whether or not you can run 3 miles, but simply sit and read books to younger children, perhaps. We may not be as strong as we used to be, but we are still strong. And for me, it was going out doing more public speaking, focusing on my health, learning to do things that were just fun, new things that were fun. I got involved with AARP and I started traveling with my friends. So, why am I bringing this up? To show you that sometimes you go outside of your comfort zone. Instead of traveling with my family, I travel with friends. Instead of sitting at home, I go out and speak to different groups. You have to go back and rethink, what are some of the things I wanted to achieve in life that perhaps I did not achieve that I want to pursue now? Look at your life goals and set new goals. Set new goals for next year. Set new goals for the next 5 years. Get out of your comfort zone. Learn new skills. Learn how to play a slow game of pickleball. Learn how to do walking with a walking group. Things that can keep you active, keep you building up your self esteem, that you look back and go, wow, I'm still contributing to society. Explore the creative areas in your life. Maybe you don't know how to sew. Take a sewing class. You may not know how to draw or paint. Take a painting class anyway. Volunteer somewhere where you're needed, in the community, in your church, at the local school. There's so many things that you can do. A cooking class. Learn new skills. You can read bedtime stories to children over the phone. There is an internet site that is seeking older adults to be a grandparent figure in the lives of children. And our children do indeed need us. So, coping with your loss of self esteem, reinvent yourself, go out and do new things. Now, the loss of a spouse, partner, or significant other, that's different. That hits very different. When this loss occurs, the survivor's world is turned upside down. And we face a flood of challenges and unstable emotions as we try to find a way through the grief. We try to find a way to move forward. Our cognitive functioning may be impaired. We're prone to injuries and trips and slips and falls in the house, and we may be living there alone. We go from saying we and us to saying me, myself, I. Even just saying it may seem strange to you. Some of the things that you and your significant other or your partner were invited to, you may not be invited to those things now because there may be couple events and you're no longer a couple. And so your self identity has shifted from a we to an I. It's no longer our car, it's my car. It's no longer our house, it's my house. It can be a painful shift. And for some, it can be very difficult to assume this new social position. And there's no one else to consult with because these are decisions that you have to make for yourself going forward. How can I go forward? Grieving is complicated. It's very complicated And for some, it becomes especially complicated and it can become quite unhealthy. Stanford University notes that people may turn to problematic behavior and to ineffective coping strategies when they find themselves alone after the loss of a loved one. They may start taking drugs. They may start drinking too much. They may start engaging in reckless behavior. They can become angry, guilty. They have difficulty concentrating and making decisions because there was always someone there that you could ask what their opinion was. You may have panic attacks or even become aggressive. It's complicated when you grieve, and no two people grieve the same. So if you have someone who's grieving in your life, don't expect them to behave the way you do. And if you're grieving and those around you don't understand, simply tell them that grieving is complicated, it's unique, it's individualized, and it can be long lasting. Sometimes you may need help. Mental health professionals and faith leaders are available. Someone trained in grief counseling and counseling those who are in bereavement. Reach out to them. And please understand that this is normal. Even when you have survivor's guilt, it's normal. Think about the pandemic and the number of people that we lost to COVID. It was hard for many of us. We were unable to go visit them in the hospital. In many cases, we were unable to give them a funeral. And so you're dealing with all of this. You are trying to cope with the loss of partners and loved ones. Your love continues beyond the loss. And often there's no closure. And you can't compare your grieving with another person's grieving. All of our relationships are different. Even if someone has been married to their partner as long as you were married to yours, it's still different. And so we've got to learn to be resourceful, resilient. It's essential that we get help when we need it. And during a crisis, there are counselors who can help us. And we have to plan the growth, plan the healing, and rethink the closure because the closure may not be the way it was before. Remember, we were talking earlier about primary and secondary losses? This is when it really comes into play. You have the loss of a loved one, but there's so much else that you've lost that was attached to that loved one. And so we have to try and keep as social as possible, engaging with others who perhaps are widows or widowers. And so they're going through similar situations. But also monitor yourself because if it's a complicated grieving process that you're going through, you may need to get into a support group. And attending support group meetings is very good to be able to simply talk about what's going on with you. You may have to seek psychotherapy. If you're in a crisis situation, a qualified mental health professional can help you to confront the problem. They can help you to identify strengths that you should lean on and also help you to develop coping skills. Remember, this is a process. Grieving is a process. It's not static. It doesn't remain the same. It changes over time. And your grieving process is something that you and you alone have to go through, but there's help for you. So don't grieve alone. The last loss in later life that I want to talk about is cognitive changes. Yes, there are different types and degrees of cognitive losses. There's the normal loss where you just kind of forget things that are happening around you or where you're headed. You may go upstairs like I do and get to the top of the stairs and go, okay, what did I come up here for? Or you may start looking for something on your computer and then something catches your eye that's more interesting. And so what you do is start going down what I call the rabbit hole of the internet. And before you know it, you've looked at 20 different things and not at the thing that you were originally looking for. But we have these cognitive losses, and it's a normal part of aging. It simply changes. Our thinking changes, our memories change. These are things that simply change for us, but it can still be handled. There are everyday tools that we can deal with. You can practice word searches and puzzles, game shows, that you get, like Jeopardy. Watch those and learn as many new facts and things as you can. It keeps your brain functioning. Use post-it notes and to-do lists like I do, and laugh at yourself when you make that list and then go to the store without that list like I often do. Challenge yourself intellectually to take a class, to learn a new skill. Did you know that in the state of Maryland, at the University of Maryland and at state-sponsored schools and Prince George's County Community College, there are senior classes where you pay a fee. It's called SAGE, S-A-G-E, and you can take college courses for free simply by paying a registration fee. You don't get credit for them as if you're pursuing a degree, but you can sit in the classes, whether it's in person or Zoom, and learn something new. There's just so many things that you can do to maintain your curiosity in life and to become a better person even as you age. Now, we talked about some cognitive losses. There are also some mild cognitive impairments that can occur. Now, these changes, they're serious enough that may be noticed by other individuals, or they may not be noticed by others. But there are changes that are not severe enough that you need to interfere with your independent functions. But it's just mild cognitive things that you need to be aware of. And as you see yourself having these changes, just make a note that, I may be forgetting more things than I should. Or when I'm cooking, I'm burning more things because I go off and watch TV and forget that I'm cooking. These are mild cognitive impairments that you need to be aware of and just keep your eye on. But then there are other levels. There's the dementia. And listed here are different types of dementias. Usually we hear only about Alzheimer's, for example, but there are different types. And Alzheimer and these types of dementia are not part of normal aging. These are progressive brain diseases, and there's no cure at the present time. Now, I'm not a medical doctor and I'm not giving you medical information, but we do want you to know that there are different details about these various diseases and how the plaques and tangles between the neurons in your brain are impacted that you should be aware of. And what you want to do is talk to your healthcare provider about it. Have them to fill you in. Tell them about what's happening to you on a daily basis, mentally and cognitively, so that they can check on you and tell you what the next steps are that you need to be aware of. But let's talk just a little about Alzheimer's because that's very important. It's a progressive brain disease. It's not normal aging. It's most common of all of the dementias, and 4.9 million people in the United States have it. Studies say that by 2050, it will increase to 13 million, and 2/3 of those affected will be women. Hispanics and the Black population are twice as likely to have it. And some of the reasons is that they have some medical issues such as diabetes and high blood pressure that may go untreated and often will be undiagnosed. That's why it's very important that we check in with a healthcare provider, a professional medical care, so that we can push back as much as possible some of these progressive things that are happening. But again, I'm not a medical professional, and I advise you to check with your healthcare provider about it. But even with that, how can we cope with these cognitive losses? Well, first of all, let's start by getting enough sleep. Too often, we want to stay up and see what's happening, read late into the night, watch television because we have 400 channels on our cable TV. Let's get back to what we were doing earlier in life. Get enough sleep so that your brain gets to rest and recharge. Exercise regularly. That gets the blood flowing freely through your body, to your lungs, to your heart, to your brain, to help it stay healthy. Eat well. Yes, there's fast food, there's quick food, but there's nothing to replace good nutrition. Try to eat as close to the source as possible. Eat fruits, eat vegetables, eat as many raw fruits and raw vegetables as possible, because sometimes you can cook all the nutrition out of your food. Avoid preservatives as much as possible. So sleeping, exercise, and nutrition, let's get back to it. but also challenge yourself mentally and cognitively. I've talked about attending classes, doing crossword puzzles and word searches. Read more magazines and books on subjects that you know nothing about so that you can learn something new. Stay socially active. We've got to do it. Cultivate an active curiosity. Think about things that are happening around you. When you hear something on the news, look it up. Find out more things about it so that you can learn new skills and then use those new skills as you volunteer to help other people. We can cope with our cognitive losses. We can slow them down sometimes just by doing these things that researchers and medical professionals have recommended to us. So let's look at a summary about these losses. Yes, we do have losses, but we've got to have resilience. We want to realize that grief is normal, whether we're losing our independence, losing our social status, losing a loved one. Don't try to reason it away. Don't try to push or pull people out of what they're going through. After they've suffered a loss, they have to go through the process. It's normal. Watch out for health problems, physical health problems, and mental health problems. Remember that change is common for all losses. We will have changes in our life. Embrace those changes, those new way of looking and thinking and acting. How can you use it to your advantage in a positive way? Allow yourself time to embrace the loss. Have an abundance of patience with yourself and with others. And then remember that resilience. Resilience is understanding that life is full of challenges. While we cannot avoid many of these problems, we have to remain open, flexible, willing to adapt to those changes. So stay connected to other people, younger people, as well as people within our age group, members of the every gender. Stay connected so that we learn from one another. And regardless of your age, make plans for the rest of your life. Write them down. What are the top 5 things you want to still accomplish? And then start going after them and cross them off your list as you go. And then add to that list as you cross things out. Seek professional health care, whether it's for physical or mental, anytime you see prolonged symptoms that may concern you. And listen when your loved ones tell you that they've noticed a change in you, because we can become blind to some things that others will see. So focus on growth, focus on healing, focus on the positive things that are happening in your life. Be patient with yourself and build that resilience. The more obstacles you face and overcome, the more times you falter and get back on track, the more difficulties you struggle with and then conquer, the more resilience you're going to develop. And if you're resilient, there's nothing that can hold you back. Thank you for joining me today as we talked about losses and how to live after those losses. It's been wonderful speaking with you.